Hey, hello, what's up everyone? In this video, I'm going to teach you about what happens when Jupiter is sitting in the third house of D10 chart or Dasamsa chart in Vedic Astrology. So, before beginning, if you guys not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel, hit the bell icon and click the like button. And if you guys have any doubt after watching this video, please do mention that in my below comment section, okay? And yes, please like and follow my Facebook community page Parikshith Astrology also. So let's begin. Now coming to the third house of D10 chart or the Dasamsa chart. What does third house of D10 chart or the Dasamsa chart represent? See, third house of D10 chart or the Dasamsa chart represents your communication. So how do you communicate with your colleagues can be seen from the third house of your D10 chart or the Dasamsa chart. It is also seen for your talent or your hard work. It is also seen for your courage, whether you have courage to start your own business or not, can be seen from the third house of your D10 chart or the Dasamsa chart. Now, what happens when Jupiter is sitting in the third house of D10 chart or the Dasamsa chart? Now, what does planet Jupiter represent? See, planet Jupiter represents teacher. It also represents knowledge. It also represents money. It also represents financial sector. It also represents banking sector. It also represents teaching sector. It also represents politicians like ministers and all. It also represents philosophers. It also represents astrologers. Now, what happens when Jupiter is sitting in the third house of D10 chart or Dasamsa chart? That shows that these people will love to work with their colleagues and also communicate with their colleagues who are all having very great knowledge. It also shows that these people love to share their knowledge in their professional life. It also shows that these people can become a very great teacher or a professor in a particular college. It also shows that these people can also work in banking sector like help desk and all. These people can also become a very great advisor. These people can also become a very great financial advisor also. It also shows that these people can become a very great astrologer also. Now, what happens when Jupiter is sitting with different planets like benefic planets and malefic planets? Now, coming to the benefic planets. Now, what happens when Jupiter is sitting with the benefic planets like Moon, Venus, and Mercury? Now, coming to the planet Moon. Now, what happens when Jupiter is sitting with the planet Moon? Now, what does planet Moon represent? It signifies happiness. It also signifies your emotions. It also signifies your mind. Now, when Moon and Jupiter are sitting in the third house, that shows that you will get happiness when you give advice to your colleagues, or it also shows that you will get happiness in your career when you share your knowledge with other people, especially with your co-workers or your colleagues. Now, coming to planet Venus. Now, what happens when Jupiter is sitting with planet Venus? Now, what does planet Venus represent? Planet Venus represents luxurious life. It also represents career related to the acting or career related to the fashion industry or designing or graphic designer, or can be very great software programmer, or can be very great software developer. So what happens when Jupiter and Venus are sitting in the third house? That shows that these people can also work in banking sector, especially in a financial part. Why? Because Venus represents transactions. Okay, guys. Jupiter represents bank or banking sector. So when Jupiter and Venus are sitting in the third house, that shows that these people can also work in banking sector or especially in financial sector. Now, what happens when Jupiter is sitting with planet Mercury? Now, what does planet Mercury represent? It represents your communication. It also represents business analytics. It also represents your logical thinking. So, when Jupiter and Mercury are sitting in the third house of your D10 chart or the Dasamsa chart, that shows that these people can become a very great business person. It also shows that these people can also open up a consultancy business. It also shows that these people can become a very great philosopher or a motivator, or can become a very great minister. Now, what happens when Jupiter is sitting with malefic planets? Now, what are malefic planets? See, malefic planets are nothing but Sun, Mars, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu. Now coming to the planet Sun. Now what happens when Jupiter is sitting with planet Sun? Now what does planet Sun represents? It represents king, government, politics. So when Jupiter and Sun are sitting in the third house, that shows that these people can become a very great politician or can work in government sector, or it also shows that these people can become a very great policeman or can work in army. Now what happens when Jupiter is sitting with planet Mars? It shows that these people, when they communicate with their colleagues, they actually communicate in an aggressive manner. Why? Because Mars shows the aggressive nature or the characteristics of a person. Now, it also shows that these people can also work in IT industries or any engineering field, or these people can even become a very great civil engineer or mechanical engineer. Now, what happens when Jupiter is sitting with planet Saturn? Now, what does planet Saturn represent? See, planet Saturn represents old and mature type of people. It also represents workaholic nature of a person. It also represents mass, that is public. Now, what happens when Jupiter and Saturn are sitting in the third house? That shows that these people love to communicate with their colleagues, especially who are very old and mature. Now, what happens when Jupiter is sitting with planet Rahu? Now, what does planet Rahu represent? See, planet Rahu represents Maya, magical. So when Jupiter and Rahu are sitting in the third house, that shows that you might get cheated from one of your colleagues, or you might cheat one of your colleagues. Now, what happens when Jupiter is sitting with planet Ketu? Now, what does planet Ketu represent? The planet Ketu represents detachment, isolation. So, when Jupiter and Ketu are sitting in the third house of D10 chart or Dasamsa chart, that shows that these people might not be interested to talk with their colleagues. Why? Because these people love to be in an isolated place. So, yep, this was my analysis of what happens when Jupiter is sitting in the third house of D10 chart or Dasamsa chart. So, yep, this is it for today, guys. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe below, or else I will see you in the next video. So, if you want any consultancy, please do contact my given below WhatsApp number, or else you can even mail me also. So, until and unless, thank you, bye bye, love you, take care.